He hung a man by his own hair and then pierced his heart with 3 javelins. The king's nephew, a military commander who ended lives with ruthless precision. Yet most people have never heard his name. Joab, David's general, history's most calculating, biblical commander. Today, we're breaking down his 5 most brilliant and brutal moments. But first, let me ask you, how far would you go to protect your family's throne? By the end of this video, you might just question everything you thought you knew about loyalty. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into biblical history's most fascinating characters. Let's set the stage. Joab was King David's nephew and military commander, his right-hand man in battle. Professor Robert Alter from Berkeley calls him the most complex military figure in the Hebrew Bible. While David was the charismatic king, Joab was the cold, calculating enforcer who did what David couldn't or wouldn't do himself. Born into the family of Zeruiah, David's sister, Joab grew up in a world of constant warfare and political intrigue. This wasn't a time of peaceful diplomacy. This was ancient Israel, where kingdoms rose and fell by the sword. Joab mastered this environment like no other. Our first moment of cold genius, Joab's calculated murder of Abner. Abner was the commander of David's rival, King Saul's son Ishbosheth. After years of civil war, Abner finally decided to switch sides and bring the northern tribes under David's rule. Peace was within reach. David welcomed him with a feast. Problem solved, right? Not for Joab. You see, Abner had previously killed Joab's brother Asahel in battle, a legitimate act of war, but Joab never forgot. As biblical historian Peter Leithart notes, in the ancient Near East, blood required blood. So what did Joab do? He called Abner back under the pretense of a private conversation and stabbed him in the stomach, killing him instantly. The timing was perfect. David had just made peace with Abner, so Joab's actions appeared to be solely about personal revenge, not politics. But here's what most people miss. By eliminating Abner, Joab removed the one man who could have challenged his position as David's top military leader. Cold, calculated genius. Our second moment showcases Joab's strategic brilliance in battle. When David wanted to capture Jerusalem from the Jebusites, he faced a seemingly impossible task. The city was so well fortified that the Jebusites mockingly claimed that even the blind and lame could defend it against David's forces. David made a bold promise. Whoever led the charge and conquered the city would become his chief commander. Joab saw an opportunity. According to 1 Chronicles 11, Joab discovered a water shaft leading into the city, what archaeologists now believe was Warren's Shaft, a vertical tunnel in Jerusalem's ancient water system. While others saw an impenetrable fortress, Joab saw a back door. He led a daring infiltration through this water system, attacking the city from within when the Jebusites least expected it. Jerusalem fell, becoming the city of David, and Joab secured his position as commander-in-chief. As military historian Robert Drews puts it, Joab's tactical innovation at Jerusalem revealed a mind that could see beyond conventional warfare. Now, moment number 3 shows us Joab's psychological genius. David's son Absalom had murdered his half-brother Amnon and fled into exile. After 3 years, David still hadn't reconciled with Absalom, creating dangerous political instability. Rather than confronting David directly, Joab recruited a wise woman from Tekoa and coached her to tell David a fictional story about two sons, one who killed the other, to manipulate David into bringing Absalom home. This wasn't just clever. It was psychological warfare against his own king. Joab understood that David couldn't be ordered to forgive his son, but he could be led to that conclusion through a parallel story that triggered his sense of justice. Biblical scholar Walter Brueggemann calls this one of the most sophisticated examples of indirect communication in the biblical narrative. Joab didn't just understand military tactics, he understood the human heart. But perhaps Joab's most ruthless moment of genius was his fourth, the execution of Absalom, the moment I mentioned in our opening. After being restored to Jerusalem, Absalom eventually rebelled against his father David and declared himself king. Civil war erupted. Before the decisive battle, David gave explicit orders to deal gently with his son Absalom. During the battle, Absalom's long hair, his pride and glory, got tangled in the branches of an oak tree as he rode underneath it. When Joab received word, he ignored the king's command and personally took 3 javelins and thrust them through Absalom's heart while he hung helpless. Here's what's chilling. Joab understood something David couldn't see through his fatherly love. As long as Absalom lived, the kingdom would remain divided. One death now would prevent thousands later. Harvard biblical scholar John Levinson writes that Joab's actions, while disobedient, likely saved the monarchy. Joab put the stability of the kingdom above his own relationship with the king, a cold calculation that David himself couldn't make. Our final moment reveals Joab's ultimate miscalculation. When David was on his deathbed, he had to name a successor. Joab backed Adonijah, David's oldest surviving son, rather than Solomon, whom David had chosen. It was a rare misstep for the usually politically savvy commander. When Solomon took the throne, Joab knew his days were numbered. He fled to the tabernacle and grasped the horns of the altar, a traditional place of sanctuary. But Solomon wasn't having it. He ordered Benaiah, his new commander, to execute Joab right there at the altar. After a lifetime of calculating others' deaths, Joab couldn't escape his own. Biblical historian Baruch Halpern suggests that Joab's final mistake was forgetting that the rules he had operated by his entire life, putting pragmatism over sentiment, would eventually be turned against him. So what do these 5 moments teach us about power, loyalty, and survival? Joab shows us that genius isn't always moral. His cold calculation